Are we going to have this conversation, Santoro?
We have to. We've had it. We've had it in a couple other methods, but we should do it here on a rough cut.
Yeah, I agree. Hey, everybody. I'm Jason. That's Jeff. And this is indeed Investing Unscripted Rough Cuts. It's been a long time since we did one, but everything that's going on with CrowdStrike right now is certainly worthy of one of these rougher stream of consciousness conversations that we have.
Yes, the podcast is called Investing Unscripted, but these are particularly unscripted.
Yeah. Yeah. We have no notes. We have nothing specific we plan. We no outline. We're just going to talk. Jeff, I'll start just by saying that this is a business that you and I both easily, for both of us, it's one of our most high conviction companies that we both own. But I do feel like we've started to diverge a little bit since this epic failure to test and release and update. Um, and I'm maybe a little more bearish than you. Is that kind of where we are?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think we're both in the camp of wait and see. I don't believe either of us have bought or sold since this whole incident went down. We're recording this on July 25th after the market closed, just so we have a timestamp on it. No, I would agree. I think I'm a little more bullish than you, but I'm still very open to the fact that this could be worse than I'm assuming.
Yeah.
I think my high level first thought about it is the market is riddled with stories of companies that have made big mistakes, people who have written them off, and then the hindsight that comes later of, oh man, that was just a bump in the road and I should have held or bought more. And the two that come to mind, one that you I think brought up the other day to me, and one that I thought of immediately, which was Netflix with Quickster, and then Chipotle with people getting sick back almost 10 years ago at this point. Um, so I don't know, if either of us knew how this is going to shake out, if we wouldn't be here having this conversation, we'd be buying or selling.
Right.
And neither of us are cybersecurity experts, although we both have spoken to people in that industry over the past week. That'll be part of the conversation we have today. But yeah, I think if I was gonna describe where I am on the spectrum of bearish versus bullish, I definitely lean bullish, I think.
Yeah. So this is going to come out before our mailbag that we just recorded. So there'll be even more stuff about this on the mailbag and like kind of some broader ways to think about these sorts of situations. I really want to focus just on CrowdStrike here, but I need to kind of lay the background. I Yeah, I've been doing this, Jeff, for longer than you, and I'm definitely not going to be saying anything about you experience matters more, and a lot of times it does, but um, what I want to kind of focus on is what my observations of other companies in the past, um, in different markets and how they've responded. Um, Things have gone very differently. So you mentioned Chipotle. And Chipotle, so I think it was 2015 or 2016, the first um, foodborne illness happened. And it happened on the West Coast. I think there were some stores in Northern California and some stores in maybe Oregon, a little further up the coast. And they started to kind of get ahead of that. And then in the Boston area, an employee went to work that had norovirus, which is the one that makes you puke. And it's highly contagious. They got a bunch of people in Boston sick. Um, so that was an unrelated event that was related in the eyes of the consumer, right? It was within weeks of everything that was going on with the E. coli thing that happened in the West. And then months after that, there was a Virginia location that I think was another like norovirus thing that happened. So for a while, it felt like they couldn't get out of their way. And this actually led to, I'm pretty sure, I'm not looking at the exact notes, but I'm pretty sure this was one of the things that led to one of the co-founders who was the CEO at the time eventually leaving the business completely, and Brian Nickel coming in. And he just it's done incredible things there, right? But what I wanted to say is that that's kind of an exception to the rule. Like the first, I think it was Jack in the Box, maybe in the '80s. They had some foodborne illness stuff, and it affected them for years and years and years and years. Um, so I don't want to like. I think it's dangerous to like confirmation bias too much by focusing on this is the one that did really well. When you also have the, and I've used it before, talked about it on the podcast episode we did, lumber liquidators, right, where they got on the other side of consumers.
And I'm
But
not
go ahead.
I agree with you. I'm not saying this will absolutely be that scenario. What I am saying is I think it depends on the time frame over which you plan to hold CrowdStrike stock. So
Yeah,
if
yeah,
if you are of the belief that this is not a fatal blow to the company and that they can recover, then to me it's an open and shut case. You either buy more or you wait. And I think the challenge is you could buy more today and it could drop another 40% if there's another issue, or if they're slow to respond, or if the way they respond is viewed poorly by the market, or if they give more detail and background at their earnings call in the next couple weeks, which won't include any numbers from this because the quarter that they're going to report has closed before this happened. But if they give any further detail that's bad, it could fall again. So the risk in the shorter term is you could buy today, and then those shares could be down double digits 6 months from now. But I think the way I'm thinking of it is I am 10 to 20 years away from retirement, and I plan to hold this stock until then. And I
definitely
just,
more like 10, less like, definitely more like 20, less like 10.
but either way, I can't imagine a scenario where 10 or 20 years from now, the stock, they're not a better, bigger, more successful company than they
This
are
is the
today.
thing that destabilized CrowdStrike. Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. I guess so. Thinking about this like through the lens of how big it is one of the things that I've been really trying to figure out how to do. Because you think about like Chipotle, like, buying a burrito, that's like you're out $15 and you puked for a few days. I don't want to make light, right? Because people died from the E. coli thing. Like people died from that. But the point is that that's like a pretty low stakes sort of thing, right?
Well,
Um,
unless you're one of the ones who did die. But yes, for
yeah, yeah,
someone who
yeah.
just
But I
got
think
sick, yeah,
by and
yeah, yeah,
large, right? Like how many people do you know? Every year you talk to somebody, it's like, oh man, I feel terrible. I got food poisoning.
right.
And they probably didn't get food poisoning. It's probably not E. coli from poor food preparation techniques. It's probably they were exposed to somebody that had norovirus and, they got that from them and it wasn't food related, right? So but the point is that like that's it. Consumers do have it like you and I talked about this. Consumers are fickle and have a short attention span and memory about that kind of stuff when the stakes are low. When the stakes are higher, and this is why I keep going back to the lumber liquidators thing, is because I mean that's flooring in your house that you have for years and you're around it. And people were afraid they were going to get cancer from the flooring. And like I said, a lot of that was kind of debunked that like the risk was substantially like overplayed. But the point is that like two things happened. Like that undermined the business big time. And it also kind of ripped off the scab or the band-aid and showed like that management really wasn't executing well on other things, right? That happened and this wasn't as well managed of a business as a lot of us thought. So
Yeah, and that's why I'm glad you mentioned that last part about having some deeper issue exposed. So I think, yeah, there's an article I didn't get to read it because it was behind a paywall for me, but there was an article that one of our friends sent to us just a few hours
the
ago
one that was on
about,
the Wall Street Journal.
yeah, Wall Street Journal
Yeah.
article about
Yep.
the accounting issues with how they recognize annual recurring revenue. I didn't read it, so I don't want to. I just saw the headline, but but that is tied into what you're saying. Whereas if this is the canary in the coal mine, so to speak, that opens up people's eyes to other issues or, cracks in the armor, different story. If this ends up being the one blemish on their flawless record over decades, then, my bullish point of view might end up being correct. I think
Right.
so. That's why, like, I'm very curious to see how they handle this in the coming weeks. And I said it on the podcast that will come out next week, which we already recorded. I want to I want to hear more about this. Like, I hope analysts on the
Yeah.
earnings call ask them, did you hear from customers? What
If they
questions did
don't,
they
I'm
have?
gonna be so pissed.
Say that again?
If they don't, I'm gonna be so pissed.
Yeah. Well, but these are the things I'm going to be looking
Yeah.
for, because look, here's the bottom line. Whenever there's a mistake, whether it's a minor mistake, a medium mistake, or like a catastrophic bad mistake, the the two things I think you should do are apologize, take ownership, and then say, here are all the things I'm going to do to make sure this doesn't happen again. And I know I mean, I've made mistakes in my life and in my work set, in work and stuff. And that's what I try to do. Like, I'm sorry, my bad. Here's what I'm going to do to make sure I don't screw this up the next time. So, one of the things I read was that, CrowdStrike said they're going to stop sending out the update to everyone all at once, which seems like something they should have already stopped doing, um, and rolling it out, right? So
Yeah.
maybe that gives some people some confidence. And by the way, everything I'm saying is things I've heard people smarter than me say. So none of these are my original thoughts. Another smart person I heard say, perhaps they change the way their Falcon platform software is on your machine, so that if there ever is another issue, it won't just brick your computer. Like, I I don't know enough about how the tech world works to know if that's feasible or not. But I think what I'm getting at is I want to hear them say, "I'm sorry, we screwed this up. There are no excuses for this, and here's the 3, 5, 10 things we're going to do to make sure it never happens again." And I think if you do that for and you're a business that's using CrowdStrike, but you've been largely happy, and this is like the one screw up, I don't know. I mean, it's hard to switch. Maybe it's not. I would imagine it's hard to switch vendors when you're used to it and they've been doing well for you, and they are the leader in the space. I mean, I've had
Yeah, it's not even
conversation.
close.
Yeah, and I said this to you, um, I think on the podcast that was going to come out next week. A friend of
I
mine who
love it
works
when
for
we're referencing something that happened in the
yeah,
past
the
for
timing
us.
on this was all screwed
It's
up.
happening for the future for other people. Yeah.
But essentially, a friend of mine who works for a competitor to CrowdStrike, the first thing out of his mouth to me when I asked him about this was he looked at me and said, "They're the leader. They're the absolute leader in the space."
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess, I mean, look, we don't have to go on and on about this. I'm in
Well,
way
I'm not, you are.
I am. I want to see, but like, I
Yeah.
wouldn't blame someone for adding a little bit here. I mean, if you turn out to be right, a 30% discount on CrowdStrike is pretty rare.
Yeah, no, that's true. I largely agree. To me, will there be liability risk? Maybe we'll find out. I mean, I think they've probably got some pretty liability insurance that'll help defray any of that kind of thing. But two things. I'm gonna leave you with a question at the end, but before the question, as this has played out more and more, I've started to wonder if this is maybe just more an indictment on Delta Airlines and their technology to anybody else. Because that's the one we've heard the most about is like, this happened on Friday and they were still canceling flights like on Monday. So maybe it's more of an indictment on Delta and that's making it seem bigger in my head.
Yeah,
Um,
I think there's another airline that was affected too, and they kind of cleared up the mess very quickly. So I,
yeah,
I don't know.
Southwest computers are so old they don't even need antivirus software.
That's
So
been the funniest kind of
yeah,
meme
yeah,
stuff out there is, who's laughing now?
right, right.
Southwest,
That's great.
who
That's really
booted up
great.
on MS-DOS today.
That's so funny. All right. So my question for you, two questions. Do you think you'll be buying more CrowdStrike stock within the next, I'm going to say 3 weeks because we're going to get through earnings. No, I'll kick it out 6 weeks. I'll kick it out 6 weeks. Give it a little bit longer. And do you think, how much do you think CrowdStrike outperforms the market over the next 5 years from this price?
Oof.
That's the
All right.
question.
So for the first one, well, I won't be able to buy it anytime soon because we've talked about it today and next Wednesday when
Fine, so give
podcast
me 6
drops.
weeks, like, I'm like, in near
All
term,
right,
let's just say
I
near
think
term.
it's
Let's
it.
don't put a date on it. Let's just say
All
in
right,
the near term.
all right. I think there's a chance I do, and but here's why. It's partially due to the fact that as of right now, I'm feeling like this will be okay in the long term, but it has more to do with the fact that I don't. It's not a large position for me.
Yeah,
And again, just by virtue of the fact that my stock portfolio in its entirety is a small portion of my invested wealth, I could probably double my position and be okay if it doesn't work out. I don't know that I would feel the same way if it were already whatever 5 or 6% of my portfolio. I might be a little bit more wait and see there,
right,
um, because
right.
the reality is like then the next quarter that's reported might seem fine, but if this really does have an impact, we're going to see it in 3 months when Q3 is reported. So I, if it was a large part of my portfolio, I might be a little more cautious because I could be like, oh, this is turning out fine, buy some, and then 3 months from now it could be down another 30%. So,
Well,
um,
I'm not enough of an expert on SEC requirements, but I the thing that I'm afraid may happen is that if they have some big customers walk,
they'll have to
I
put
don't
out
know,
an
like,
8K about it.
well, what is the threshold for it being material, right,
Yeah.
where they have to disclose that? So I don't I can't help but wonder if maybe there's another leg down, but then, of course, there's the part of me that's like, "Hey, dummy, um, chill out, position size, really think about adding more." So to answer those questions for that first
Well, I
question
didn't
for
answer the
myself,
second one. So I
no,
would
no,
say,
I'm gonna answer the first one.
okay, okay.
My answer for the first one is I don't know. I don't know if I will. Probably not, but I'm leaving open the possibility that I will. So how will the stock do against the market over the next 5 years?
It'll be the market in the next 5 years.
Like, by a lot?
I, I don't want to I don't want to answer that because I mean, who knows what happens in the next 5 years with the market generally.
Yeah.
If we have another 2022 kind of year, or if we have two of those in a row, it might lose to the market simply because of that. I mean, I believe it trailed the market in 2022. Um, those types of stocks tend to do worse than the market when the market crashes. Um, but I can't pretend like it's not my highest conviction stock and say that I don't think it's going to beat the market. Or
Yeah.
if I was sitting here right now not thinking it was going to beat the market in the next 5 years, I have no business holding it.
Yeah, I have not sold because I think everything's going to be fine. Like, I really think everything's going to be fine. That's why I
On a
haven't
long enough
sold.
timeline, yes. It's just how long is that timeline, I think is the question people need to answer for themselves.
Yeah. Okay. I think we're done.
That's it. I'm tired of you.
I'm tired of me too, Jeff. Okay. If you're dumb enough to listen to this podcast, you should be smart enough to know to not take our advice. Make your own decisions. You can do it, et cetera, et cetera. All right. See you, Jeff.
See ya.